All right. So sorry, we're a little bit late there. Had to reconnect our stream here, but of course, welcome to the our 2 week film challenge Saturday. Uh, Talk about actually what's going on as far as what 2 week film challenge actually is. So let me get my notes pulled up here. And Jen, if you can close that door behind you for a moment, I think I can hear myself echoing on your side of things here real quick. And so while she's doing that, because she's same area as me. But we're going to go through a few things here. We're going to go through about the history of what's going on, how this all came to be, what is actually happening. Later on in the video, we will have some other challengers, or rather, one of my friends, join in here and kind of talk about his side of things and how this also came to be his side of the story, rather, because they're very similar. But let me get Jen back in here. And Jen's coming in now. And then we also have Lindsay, which is also here now as well. There we go. I got everybody in here. Oh, that's not what I want here. Let me get us all on the same screen here. There we go. All right. So, of course, Lindsay, I was just saying that how later on in the video, we'll hopefully have another person come in, Will, to talk about his side of the history of things, but ultimately how everything came to be, the equipment that we're going to use, because I'm sure his side of the story is a little bit different than mine. But ultimately, 2 week film challenge came as a kind of a joke. My friend Will had basically he's working on a project, which hopefully he'll talk a little later about. But working on a project, said he was getting a camera. Was asking me, hey, what should I get? And so he was telling me about some of the things he wanted to get, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I want this too. And so it ended up coming out that we ultimately ended up getting pretty much the same camera. And of course, I didn't have a project set in stone that I was going to be able to use it for, at least not yet. I had plans onto it, and it's something I've always had wanted to do. So ultimately, I looked at grab my outline here so I can actually see stuff. So ultimately, what I wanted to do was I ended up getting the same similar stuff and started building my whole camera rig together. I ultimately went with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro, so that I could shoot up to 6K if need be. But I quickly found out that those files are far too large to shoot. So I ended up primarily shooting in 4K recently. But so how all this came to be is I had this camera. I wasn't really doing much with it at the moment, not to its full extent. Uh, and so, Jenny got me all talking with that message. Thank you. But you're right. I did not introduce you, and I apologize. So,
You just
you
went
know,
on your own little tangent. We're just
I
like,
did
hello, hi.
because I have to follow an outline. That's my problem. Is I get so sidetracked, so I have to follow an outline, and I did not put intros at the top. So please introduce yourself. I apologize.
Okay, well, sure. So I'm Jen. I'm not part of the 2 week film challenge.
Yeah, actually, you
Honestly,
are.
I
You kind of are because I need help with you
kind
from
of.
you.
I mean, like, cool. I'm here in the background. I'm just a ghost for everything that's happening. Really. Um, I was one of the. I was around in the time of like when the whole like joking of the 2 week film challenge happened, and then I started throwing out ideas of like, oh, what if you shot this and this and this? And so I'm just here to, as we have mentioned, Will's joining later. So to help field questions here, fill time and the time being. But yeah, hello, welcome. I don't know how much often you'll see my face here, but here we are.
All right. And Lindsay?
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I am Will's wife, and didn't realize this was like a capital T thing, like production, until I interrupted the live stream on whatever night it was, Thursday, telling Will I'm going to bed, and ended up definitely not going to bed because I'm like, oh, this is a thing. So, yeah, I am helping him. He will talk about his little brainchild in a little bit here, but I'm fine giving the what my ADHD brain has determined as a synopsis of what he's doing, if we need to here in a little bit.
Cool.
But
I
yeah,
think that's fun.
Yeah, like Jen said, I'm kind of just here in the background, joking with my dear sweet husband that his project's going to let me actually use part of my degree that I've never used before. So, you know, always fun.
Very nice. All right. So let's see here.
So yes,
Because so I had
you started.
talk about my equipment and stuff like that, but just touching on that, and before I totally forgot to do the introductions there, but um, yeah. So ultimately, it came down to the point where I just wanted equipment as well. I had done video many years ago, and this is something I wanted to do again because my original camera was a 3 CCD standard definition camera, which I don't know when HD became a thing, but it was like many years ago, like
Yeah,
2004,
for everybody at
2005.
home, it's just a camera, clearly. In layman's terms.
I mean, but most people know what standard definition, high definition. At least I would hope they would. Or probably this day and age, kids don't know what the HD is. I mean, the SD is. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, it's kind of like asking someone what's a CD. Um. Anyway, yeah. So wanted equipment too. Got all that stuff. Got all, and I jokingly, we were talking about technique and stuff like that, and I jokingly said, I should just tell you to go shoot something. You should go do it. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, and then you can give me one to go do because I'm not doing anything with my equipment right now. And he's like, yeah. And so we just kind of like jokingly went back and forth about some of the things. Jen pitched in some of her ideas. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to run with this because ultimately this is not something that I am like, it's not, I just need to do, I just need to do something and get started with it because otherwise I'm just never going to do it. So we jokingly said, okay, let's make a list. So we created a list and I kind of went through it. And then, of course, for me, I'm one of those people that just takes a project and just kind of blows it up and does all the crazy stuff with it. And generally nothing comes of it. But this one we actually started doing. And I think, Jen, would you say you were like, this is not going to happen, right? How was your reaction
So
when you first heard about it?
here's the thing about Matt and Will. Things are said all the time. So a lot of these conversations happen in a different aspect offline for another thing that, we all do together. And so for that, there's a lot of times where we talk about like, oh yeah, we're going to do this, that, and the other. And we talk about it. It's like a all talk, no game kind of situation. And so when this first started going on and when Matt and Will started talking about it at first, and I was just pitching ideas of like, oh, you should shoot this, or what if you could do that, or whatever. It really got to the point of like, is this really going to be a thing? Like, yeah, the thing is that Matt and Will's schedules, from what I hear and what I can see on my end, are very busy, very jam-packed. And so it didn't feel like there was going to be time for y'all to take on this new adventure in a whole challenge to be set forth. And so, one, I'm thankful that y'all are doing this because I think it's going to really obviously challenge yourself, but really like take like what both of y'all already had, the knowledge y'all had, and then continue to grow. Like, for example, over the last couple of days of like, speaking with Will and Matt, it's just they've learned so much, I think, within like the last 2 weeks with using editing software and like what their camera can and cannot do, the capabilities, and just slowly hearing like the bits and pieces coming together. And it's really awesome. Like, it's really great to see all of that come to fruition after, buying all this equipment and just doing something really cool with it. So I'm excited. Of course, obviously, I threw out my ideas of what I want to see shot. So I'm excited to see any of those challenges come up. Not saying that y'all didn't come up with great ideas already, but Jen has good ideas. So we need to see some of mine.
Clearly, you got to tell yourself. No, yeah, we do. I mean, there's a lot of good ideas in there, and they're continuing. And so we actually, towards the end of this, we'll talk more about it. But there's a website, and we'll want people to submit challenges. There will be a list of the challenges that we've already either done or are in the queue because they are ultimately random. How we get them, but we do want people to submit them because there are things that I haven't thought of. Because to me, I'm a little biased because whatever I come up with, there's a likelihood I'm going to be able to accomplish it because it's something I know I can do it to a certain extent. Now, I mean, some of the challenges I've come up with, honestly, I don't know how I'm gonna do these. Like, there are some logistical issues within a 2-week period of time. And I know Will at
Right.
one point said that, like, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this in time. And he's like, oh, we can extend it. I'm like, then it's not a challenge. So it's 2 weeks, every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Obviously, if there's a major issue, something like that, obviously we'll either cancel it and go to something else. I mean, but ultimately, if it's a personal issue, then it's not a challenge. So I don't want that leeway for myself at the very least. Obviously, if medical issue or you got family, something's happening, obviously I understand.
Right.
But I at least want to be able to push for that. So I've been trying to plan my weeks out, to try to do everything early so that if I run into issues, like, I have that time to repair it rather. Because this last challenge, I think I shot and edited like on the last couple days right before it.
Yeah.
I highly miscalculated my time frames. But I lost track of thought of what I was like, because Jen, you mentioned how you heard about this and what your kind of reaction was. Lindsay, I'm kind of curious. I know you kind of came in late to the whole
Yeah.
explanation of the
Yeah.
challenge thing, but what was your thoughts on it?
I mean, you guys talk so often when y'all are together online. And so I hear bits and pieces, dribs and drabs. And I remember Will telling me, like, oh, hey, Matt and I are doing like a film challenge. And in my mind, it was just like, oh, okay, they're just like challenging each other to like do these different things. I think that'll be really great. Like, Matt, you've got so much experience hands on, and Will has a lot of conceptual and theoretical knowledge. But for him being able to do these things, and you were talking about making sure you're like planning out ahead of time, I think that's something that he really needs to practice on. But I think at the same time, it's going to be really great for him to have those clutch moments where he has to do it like, oh crap, like fix things the night before to prepare him for his project, because you have to sometimes just get things immediately done. He's calling me right now. Hold, please.
Yeah, I was
Will,
gonna say
we
you should be able
want
to
you
mute
here.
yourself there
Where
if you
are
need to.
you?
But yeah, no, I completely agree with that. That's the thing, is it's like some of these challenges are really going to require planning, and like I've already drafted up emails to reach out to people on some of these like templates, so to speak. It's like, hey, um, I think one of the ones I came up with was like, I saw your post on social media. Would you be interested in helping with this? So things like that. I've actually come up with those templates, and of course made it available to Will so that he has those as well. But because I don't want to get myself, in, just, I mean, in my sense is that's still all part of the planning thing, but I have those available to everyone, so that way it makes it a little bit easier for anyone to do that. So ultimately, and I'm saying ultimately a lot for some reason, but um, there are those things I've already started trying to think ahead of those, because some of those are very just like I said, 2 weeks is. I mean, I've done film challenges in the past, which they were like 48 hours.
Oh wow.
It was given like it was just a single challenge. It was like, here's um, and I can't say what that challenge was online or who did it, but it was basically a 48-hour challenge that you had to. Um, they provided you with like a not a script, but like certain aspects. Like you had to have a Dutch angle. You had to have I think someone cleaning windows. Like it was these random like
So really,
items. Uh-huh.
really
And you had
quick,
to,
a Dutch
yeah.
angle, just to give a little bit more context. Can you kind of explain a little bit more what a Dutch angle is?
Yeah, it's kind of a sideways or a catty wampus screen. I don't know how to describe it. It's shot at an angle. It's to create uh I actually
Drama.
can't think of the word. No, I mean yes, but it's to I can't think of the word, but it creates not anxiety, but it creates it's
Tension.
used for, it's used to create tension. It's a dramatic effect. Generally, a lot of times you'll see it in like horror films, like looking upstairs or something like that.
Mhm.
But
Mm.
and I don't really know why it's called a Dutch angle. Maybe someone in the Dutch create. I don't
Maybe
know.
somebody can comment,
And I've never.
tell us.
Yeah, you'd be like, you're an idiot, Matt. You should know this. No.
Right.
So, and actually, one of the challenges is to shoot three Dutch angles. So that's actually one of the challenges, ironically. So, but that was like something you had to, if you had a, most people would have a script, waiting for these things to come in. So like 8 a.m. you'd get all this information, create your script, go out, shoot it, edit it, and then 48 hours later you turned it in. And that was the film contest. And at the time it was a big thing. It was a big company that did it. So that it was a really cool thing, and I don't think it's done anymore. But that's kind of what I started thinking about, how I kind of wanted to do this as well, is that have these challenges. And while at the end of the challenge, so to speak, is, you know, Will jokingly said that I want a shirt that says I beat Matt at his own game if he won. And I said, I will do that. That's fine with me. And I will admit it.
Ooh.
So yeah, so of course, if I win, I think I was going to initially put like 2-week film challenge 2022 winner, something to denote it. You know, we'll get one of Jen's old big ninja trophies, your karate trophies. No,
Ninja
I'm not gonna
Come
gonna
on.
make someone
Come
have that
on.
trophy in their
Ow.
home. Jeez, those things are huge.
I mean,
Anyway,
There's only one that's like 12 feet tall. I mean, like, you know.
sorry.
I'm
mean,
sure
six-foot
I'm sure Lindsay
ones-
would love to have a 12-foot trophy in her home for this.
I mean,
Yeah.
we already have enough crap, so.
Just
Yeah,
highlights on the wall.
speaking of crap, Will called to tell me that his gimbal was just delivered and I needed to go get it off the front porch. So another piece of
Nice.
equipment
Very
Yeah.
nice.
in our
That's-
possession.
That's gonna be a fun thing to deal with. Jen,
Yeah.
you have a
while we're
question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, while we're talking about equipment, Lindsay, I'm other than the gimbal, I'm sure you might not have a lot of knowledge here, but maybe Matt, you can talk about like some of the upgrades. I think in the beginning, when you were just on a roll without introducing us, you started talking about like your camera and like what you're shooting with and whatnot. Maybe talk about some of the equipment that you've also used, or some of the equipment that's specific for the challenge that you and will be needing to use, and maybe a little bit more context about that.
Yeah. So yeah, good question. So the of course the camera I have is already kind of mentioned, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, 12K Pro, and of course that was the part of the challenges, not explicitly said, but we're only using those cameras for this particular project. So you can't pull out your iPhone and use that to shoot the video. It's not the case here. It has to be, it has to be, especially the one the challenge Will has right now. That would be a good one to have an iPhone here in this particular aspect. But so
on a side note, those challenges to shoot from a cat or dog point of view, right?
Yeah, perspective. Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
it. So yeah, so he has to create a little video there. And most of the videos that we create are short. They're like, I would like think it's a good idea to keep it under a minute, because to prevent people from losing interest. But I would think some of these are going to be a little bit longer to keep them under 3. But ultimately, yeah, that's the absolute requirement. So you have to use the Blackmagic camera to do this.
Okay.
You can shoot in whatever resolution you want to. I generally shoot in 4K just because I want to be able to make sure my computer can handle it, which it can. Haven't had an issue with that. But ultimately, the videos are uploaded in 1080p because a lot of video hosting doesn't allow, other than YouTube, doesn't allow anything higher than 1080p. So
Right.
ultimately, have to use 1080p for the most part. But I still upload in 2K at the very least. And now that we just got our YouTube channel going on,
Ooh.
so we're not live there yet because I have to wait so long for YouTube to, I guess, verify it or whatever.
Okay.
But eventually we'll upload there too. But yeah, so as far as back to the equipment goes, using the Blackmagic camera, of course, one of the reasons I got the 6K Pro was because of the mount it has on it. It uses a Canon EF mount, and the cameras that I've had before this has been Canon cameras, full frame cameras.
Mhm.
So to be able to use the same lenses that I have on those to my camera made it easy. It just made it logical. Hey, I can
that's super
snap this on and go.
Yeah.
While it's not a cinema lens, it's a pretty damn good lens.
Mhm.
It's a I wouldn't say wide, but the lens itself, the kit lens itself is 24 to 135 millimeters. So on this particular camera, the sensor size is actually smaller, which means that the lens is actually a little more telephoto. So in other words, it's a little more zoomed in. So instead of being like an equivalent of 24, it's like 35 millimeters. So it's zoomed in slightly. I realize a lot of people may not understand what that means, but basically putting a lens on it makes it more zoomed in at this stage
I'm
because
not.
of the sensor size.
So, on a
Yeah,
side note, there's a lot of times where Matt and Will just start talking camera, and then half the time I'm like,
zone out.
it's not that I zone out. It's just like y'all get so technical and so in the details that like I'm sure Lindsay and I, as very like camera novice, like, oh, let me just shoot on my iPhone. Like, ha ha ha, I can shoot on this. You know, maybe I did have, you know, like a Canon point and shoot. I have, you know, my
Yeah.
Canon. I don't know even what you call that anymore, but my
T1i, I think is what it
yeah,
was.
I had
Yeah.
that I very rarely shot on. So I mean like my camera knowledge very, very limited, and y'all start talking about lenses and then zoom, and then like I think at one point you start talking about like the camera plus the zoom makes, or like the power on the camera made like less of a zoom or something. And these are things that, you know, Lindsay and I'm maybe, but for me, I'm like, what are you talking about?
No, for me, like half of my degree is technically a film and digital media degree, but I got that in 2009. And the technology has changed a lot since then. And for me, the interesting part was always like the logistics and just like creating the story and the more technical aspects of actually what you do on like a set to be able to have the people who have the camera knowledge capturing the footage and
So producer roles.
yeah,
basically.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
that's what really interests me. And most of what I remembered. And my God, I was really lucky that I was able to pull things out of thin air most times with all of my projects and made it work. And oh man, I'm so jealous of you guys getting to play with all this stuff. I remember sitting up at 3 a.m. in the editing lab on like Final Cut and trying to dump all my files in, and the Macs are just like stuck.
You're stuck crunching all the data. Yeah.
That's
Spinning
funny,
wheels.
Lindsay, that
Yeah.
you say about you know, being able to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Originally, when Matt and Will were talking about it the whole time, I was like, oh, you know, like, what if I just for funs and poops and giggles,
Yeah.
like, shot on my iPhone and, like, you know, tried to, like, do that? But, I mean, hi.
Rule number one.
They start talking about Final Cut Pro, and I'm like, I've never in my life touched, opened, used it. I don't know what I'm doing. So everything would be in, like, iMovie.
Yeah, and so the thing is that's one of the reasons we wanted to only be able to shoot with a Blackmagic camera was because you don't have autofocus, you don't
Mhm.
have or pinch to zoom. You
Right.
know, you actually have to rotate the lens to zoom. You have to, unless it's something called a prime lens, which means it's only one focal length. There is no zoom.
Mhm.
And you have to rotate the knob to focus. You have to, um, if you want a special filter, you got to put the filter in front of the lens. You know, it requires a lot more, um, you know, actual movement on the physical
Mhm.
movement on the camera itself. So, but the nice thing about that is also not only being able to shoot in 4K and in my case 6K, is that you have that resolution, that look that is just much more.
Mhm.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Mobile devices these days have a ridiculous amount of specs in them, which is great. But yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, like having the ability to, and I'm looking out the side of my eye because I have the camera that I have set up next to me. But um, you talk about the other equipment in addition to that. So other than the requirement items, like in the lens that I have, of course, I want to get Will's gonna I think a couple lenses at this stage, but I wanted to get a couple additional lenses so that I can shoot a little bit wider because again, my wide angle lens on my Canon 5D Mark II is great, but not necessarily on the Blackmagic camera.
Mhm.
So I want to get a little bit wider lens to help me open up some spaces to get my establishing shots or my wider shots if I need to. But I also have a matte box on the front, while the camera itself has its own built-in something called ND filters in it in order to basically darken the scene. So if it's very very bright outside, instead of increasing your shutter speed to make it darker, um, or lowering your aperture to make it darker, stuff like that,
Mhm.
you use ND filters, which basically make the scene darker, and they also color a scene slightly. It just makes things easier. So mine has it built in.
Mhm.
I know Will's doesn't, so he actually has to use an actual filter on the front. But so other than having that, for this last challenge I had, I used a circular polarizer, so that I could get nice darker skies without being blown out while I'm on camera.
Mhm. Right.
And so that was my challenge for last time, and of course, it required me to use the matte box or lens filters, which thankfully I had. But having that matte box, being able to block light and stuff, has just been really nice. It also looks really cool in the camera, so a lot of people are just like, "Oh, this is cool looking." Yeah, it is cool looking. I'm not gonna lie, but it actually has functionality that I like being able to use. For the most part, I won't be using the flags and stuff like that on it, which are the you can't see it, but like the barn doors, basically, essentially that go on either side or at the top of the uh, the matte box itself. But
As
yeah, it
I
has a
like to
rotating
call them, the camera blinders.
the camera blinders.
That's what they look like.
I mean, it's literally what they're doing is you're just controlling the light, preventing it from hitting the side of the lens and stuff like that.
Okay.
So
No, I have a photo from college when I was having to do one of my lighting projects down in the little film studio. And the blinder that went on the light, I have a picture of Will sitting down cross-legged on the white just staging area, and he has one of those on his face, and he looks like
I
the
think I remember that
monster
photo.
from Stranger Things. And I there and here is our subject of the week for the
Mhm.
2 weeks that we
Uh-huh.
changed for Will.
Good get.
This is Santa.
Yeah, actually, I think actually in as far as terms go and lighting on some of those Fresnels and stuff like that, they actually are called barn doors. So
Oh,
yeah, so that is correct there. But um,
I'm just
yeah,
amazed by how much the technology has changed and how
how
it
cheap it's gotten, honestly, in my opinion.
you
Holy
could
crap!
shoot something high quality on an iPhone. I think what you guys are delving into is, there's so many things you can do in post production and editing, as far as adjusting colors and taking entire things out that don't need to be there. But the challenge, and I think the artistry that you and Will are most interested in, is how can you do it from an analog perspective, right? How can you use physical tools to make it happen before you get into the editing room?
Right?
And
Yeah,
that's, yeah, considering the topic of Will's project and how much it is about art and memory and the ephemeral nature of experiences, I think that's a
yeah.
really good thing that y'all are doing this the way that you are. So
Yeah. So, and yeah, that was one of the things. The big things was is that it's not all about the editing. Yeah, we could do some cool stuff in editing, but ultimately, it's about using the physical aspect of it. So, yeah, no, that's dead on there. Um, so yeah, it's trying to think. I use a rail system in order to attach everything to it because there's just so many functionalities that in order to get everything to sit right. And like the
mhm.
Blackmagic camera itself doesn't have the greatest battery life because it has like a 5-inch screen on the back of it, so a touch screen, so kind of sucks down battery. You can get like a viewfinder so that you can look through it, but that's like an extra $600, and I was like, no, that's
ooh.
yeah, it's or 530 or something like that. It's not. I
And
mean, whatever.
storage is
But
another challenge to overcome. I know Will's been ordering 1,000 different things to try to fix his storage issues.
yeah, so that was an interesting thing because you can connect a solid state hard drive into the computer using a USB-C port on the side. Which initially I think he was like, "Oh, I have an extra hard drive. I'll plug in." I was like, "I don't think you're gonna get the speeds you want," because when I was looking at the speeds for like the top tier of shooting in RAW 6K, and it was I think like 443 megabits per second, which is bananas fast. I
Mhm.
even from a technology standpoint, that's crazy amount of data being transferred. And I think most solid state hard drives, well, faster than spinning hard drives, I think transfer somewhere around 300 megabits a second, standard. So you have to even get a fast solid state hard drive at that stage. So these cameras have, I just blanked on what they're called. They're called CF cards.
Mhm.
And so I thought that stood for complex flash cards. No, CF cards are a totally different thing. They're not compact flash cards. They have a slightly different attachment, which also means that they are more expensive too. So for like, I think I found a 256 gig like name brand card, and that's the thing about memory is you always want to go good because you don't want to go cheap with that because if you get drop frames or your data gets corrupted, then it breaks everything down.
Mhm.
So like a 256 card, I think was like $100. So I mean, in this day and age, 256 gigs for $100 is crazy expensive. I think if you wanted like a 1 terabyte, you're gonna pay like $500, $600 for one of these things.
Oof.
So yeah, so like the card itself, not the best route to take. A 1 terabyte, like this thing's like the size of a business card that you plug in the
Wow.
side of it, $100 easily. So those are the best route to go. Of course, you still have to mount them on the camera or something like that. But I know Will has like a little mount to put it on his. Mine has I have a cage on mine called made by Small Rig, and it has a slot that you slide it into, so it actually holds it onto the camera itself. So that's what I primarily use. I primarily use that solid state hard drive to shoot with, but I also have the CF card as well because I also have the Ronin RS2 stabilizer, which I think you can still mount a hard drive onto it, but with as heavy as my lens is and everything like that, I didn't want to add that additional weight to it, and it's just a lot easier to shoot in. That now, mind you, I don't shoot in 6K RAW, not necessarily due to the speeds, but just that it stores like 10 minutes on the card. So I remember is I hate to even admit it, but when I went to film school essentially, and then I did absolutely nothing with that after I got out of there, um, or my degree in film and digital media, I did work for like a marketing company, which we did a lot of great stuff with it. But after that, I didn't really use video much. I did all the marketing side of things, but not really video. But I remember capturing video at the time from tape. And so those files were like, I remember thinking like 10 gigabytes for like an hour of video was bananas to me. The video I captured yesterday or a couple days ago in 4K, I think it was 43 gigs for 7 minutes. And I was just like,
That's insane.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, I was just like, oh man, this is, I need to shoot in a low res for these challenges, but at the same time, I don't want to shoot. I want to at least shoot in 4K at the very least, because
Yeah.
if I have a project that comes along that might need some of this footage, then I have it available to me. So that's the
Mhm.
way I see it, is that maybe this could be stock footage in the future for something,
Yeah.
especially with my current challenge, which is ironically Will's challenge that he had last week or last round, which
Matt,
is
do you feel anything about following up Will's performance of the last challenge? How do you feel about that?
not gonna lie, it really surprised me. For him being like, "Oh, I need help with this, this, and this, and this, and this," and then to come up with something as creative as he did, really surprised me. So big kudos for that because I was not expecting that whatsoever. That's why it's me like, "Oh, here's this guy." Me sitting in front of the camera doing that and going, "Hey," you know.
I will let you both
It's
know the good news is this: the house no longer smells like cigar smoke. Thank goodness.
so yeah. Of course, if you didn't see the previous live stream we did, definitely take a look at it because we did show both of the videos there. But of course, Will had basically where he had to shoot either fireworks, fire, something flammable essentially, and so that's what he did. He did a striking a match with a cigar, but the way he did it was very. Basically did it as a silhouette. It looked really good. He shot it. I should be having him explain this, but I think he said he shot it at 60 frames a second and then slowed it down to 30, so that he would have a little bit of a slow mo on the lens there or on the video, which
Yeah.
I think it turned out really good. Like I said, I was actually very, very surprised, and I was mad at myself for not being more creative. Which, in my mind, I was thinking I'm going to go easy on him. I'm not going to do like anything crazy because I don't want to make him feel like maybe he's like. Because I know, like, you know, when you and I do something, I'm something I'm very good at, and I do something and it like blows you out of the water, you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore because I can't compete. And so I kind of had that mentality, but at the same time, I want to say it on the stream, but I can't. But F you, Will, I'm bringing it now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, That's all I have to say with that.
I'm
But I mean,
very curious how he's going to get the perspective of an animal. Just we
yeah,
have.
because I mean, the camera's not small. It's heavy. It's dense, and especially with the lens and stuff like that, because ultimately you really need a wide angle lens for that. And
Mhm.
hold on. I can hear it on yours. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I had a cough. But
That's why I'm
yeah,
trying to be in the other room.
that's I mean, again, that's why it's the challenge. I mean, like, I have no idea how he's gonna do that. I don't have any idea how I'm gonna do that. I had a couple ideas come to mind, but I'm like, I don't even know if that would work.
Mhm.
This may have been a terrible idea. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. And the thing is even if he doesn't hit it, nail it right, it still shows something that
The
of what
growth.
is, yeah, it's still something. It still pushes you. I think I mentioned. I think one of the challenges is showing videoing someone playing an arcade game. Now, Will mentioned he was like, I felt like that's a cop out for me because I have an arcade cabinet in my garage, and I was like, but you are able to control your lighting. And I said, not only that, but you have to plan someone to come video. You have to plan things. He's like, oh, okay. I said, I was like, to me, yeah, it's gonna be a lot harder for me because I actually gotta go find somebody.
Yeah.
But logistically speaking, he can control that lighting situation and just
Oh
do
yeah.
something really cool with that. And actually, I was thinking something like imagining. I haven't seen El's Garage, but I was imagining something like him almost doing something similar to what he did last time playing the video arcade, like some bright fluorescent lights behind him. That's what
Yeah.
I was thinking. Almost kind of like a Tron aspect of that smoky.
Yes.
So
Please stop putting smelly things in my home for this challenge.
fog machine, it'll smell like sugar.
Do not encourage him. No, we have since the last time you guys were here, he has acquired Aria, come in. Now I have both cats wanting to be with me.
Oh.
We've acquired maybe 4 or 5 neon like bar lamps. So
Oh.
we have those. The way that it's painted in there looks like tricolor sunset like stripes. So
Nice,
he could do something really fun with that if he draws that one. Oh.
very nice. And so the other thought is, how does this end? Because ultimately, it comes to a point where Will's project is going to have a project that he's going to have to go take care of. Now, I don't know if he'll be able to. It'll be up to him whether he can complete that challenge and do what he has to do. I don't know, but I was also trying to figure out like an end point. Like, when does this challenge actually end? And while there are like, I don't know, 50 different challenges in here, um, I'm gonna try to go for as long as I possibly can. But I was thinking about like technically ending it like in the end of 2022, which is
Yeah.
still a good 11 months from now. So that way, every year it just kind of resets. And then if we have someone else that wants to join us, they join. So I figure at the very least we'll have an ending, so that way someone gets a T-shirt at the end of the challenge, nonetheless. Because I even thought about
We
making
might make
T-shirt.
it different. Might be more than a T-shirt. Could be something way
Yeah,
cooler.
it could be something else. Like,
Hi, welcome sponsors. Hello,
Is
yeah.
this an
sponsors.
excuse to get a Cricut so we can make custom T-shirts for this?
So by the way, and Jen's gonna show you. He has a cricket. So, but I think I'm gonna still make official. Like, I'm gonna send one to Will, but I'm still gonna make official like 2-week film challenges. That way, if you have to work with someone, you have the official shirt. Just 2-week film
I
challenge on it.
love it.
So, but yeah, so I think we're still gonna do those regardless. It just the winning one will have at some point. Really gaudy silver or gold glittery text. Something very obnoxious.
Bedazzled.
Bedazzled. What is that company? And I think they're out of Dallas. What is it? Bling is the new black, and maybe we can ask them to make us a.
Hi, would you like to sponsor us? Hello. We are now accepting sponsors in case hashtag.
I mean,
So here's the question: what's the plan for like other people joining it? Is this like are we going to have an open call at any point?
good question. So I really haven't had anyone say they're interested yet, but of course we just got started with it. If people are interested, it just kind of depends on how many people are interested. Because really, the only real outcome here is learning to use technology, and of course, while we require Blackmagic cameras, that's the other problem is people might not have that.
Yeah.
So maybe moving forward after maybe this initial year, we may do that, change that so that you can use any camera as long as it's not a mobile phone camera or something like that. So an actual camera.
Damn it.
Um, so I mean, not to say mobile devices don't have cameras on them, they do, but I mean, that might, like I said, that might all change. That wasn't the initial purpose here, but purpose was to actually use a cinema camera or even a DSLR
Yeah.
would work here. I'd be okay with that. So I mean, because a lot of DSLRs, that's what a lot of people are using these days is DSLRs. And to an extent, Blackmagic is not a DSLR by any means, but it to me it has that form to it. So I mean, what is it? Red cameras are literally a freaking square. I think that one of the new Canon cameras are squares. I mean, they're just big cubes. So I mean, yeah. So I think eventually we will open it up so that people can start. Like I said, if it's enormous, like I'm not gonna kid myself here. I'm not gonna get my hopes up and think this will blow up or something like that, and people are gonna be like, "Oh yeah, I went in." If that's the case, then yes, we're probably going to change it slightly or
Yeah.
have a side challenge where that'll be the thing. Like every couple weeks, we put out a new challenge for people to enter in, and congrats, you won. We'll send you a T-shirt. That may be something. I don't know. It's like I said, I just took the idea and ran with it, made something out of it, and hopefully other people think it's interesting. Some people might think it's cool. Some people are thinking it's idiotic and telling me that I haven't done anything with my degree, and they would be correct. But
Well, you have though, Matt. You have. I mean, there's so much. I think.
I know I see some of like my other people that went like to school with me, and like some of the stuff they're doing, and I'm just like, I want to do that. So maybe I will. I mean,
and I mean, you think of like the professors that we worked with and what they've accomplished and what they do and their, experience. But I think there's something about it that videography is so accessible because of the technology that we have now. And I mean, everyone can make a video in their bedroom with I mean, like kids are doing TikTok and oh my God, I sound so old. There's
TikTok.
Oh, I was talking to my therapist and about like some stuff I'd seen on TikTok. He's like, yeah, some of my other patients talk about TikTok too, but they're generally 15 to 20 years younger than you. I was like, oh, great.
Ouch. That's right. That's cuts right into the soul there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there, I think being able to capture the world, art, viewpoints on film is so accessible where it used to be such a higher art form that you had to have money and you had to have resources for. And I think this originated out of you and Will, and really you trying to help Will develop his skills as a filmmaker and what he wants to do. His project is purely a passion project. It is like the nexus point of all of his interests, and being able to do I admire him so much that he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna pick this thing up and figure it out and try to do this. And
I was really surprised.
He gets so flustered about, am I doing well enough with this, or oh, do I really have the skills or the ability to do this? But I think it's simultaneously something that like anybody can really pick up and do with enough desire to learn and grow those skills and time and effort. And he has an eye for these kinds of things. Like you said, his first challenge was so creative that I think I am really excited to see what this does as far as developing his skills. And I think this challenge format is going to help him grow and have to have that schedule and not just say, oh, we can delay it, a week if we need to. Like, no, like it's like the 2 weeks is the 2 weeks and we make it work. Like we're going out of town next weekend, but y'all are sticking to schedule and, I think this is a really good thing. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Excited to see what you guys are able to accomplish with all of this. And as long as we don't set anything else on fire in my house, I am to be. I mean, not to lie, I was the one that was like, well, let's see how these like emergency weatherproof matches work. And he's like, I think there's things in this I can't breathe, Lindsay. Like, so we learned that the weatherproof matches do not go out fully when submerged in water.
Well then, all right.
So how do you put it out then, Lindsay?
You'd let it burn out.
Oh, okay.
Or shove it underwater for a long time and pray that the scary bubbling stops soon.
That sounds slightly terrifying, but something that I would do. Just be like,
I feel, I'm not like, I feel like kind of like we should have this a separate podcast for just the two of you guys, just telling us about the behind the scenes or the stuff that you had to deal with while we were shooting these things. Honestly, because
the behind the scenes for me and Matt is Matt's outside and I'm like, take a video of the dog pooping. Hi,
true story, by the way. True story.
I'm immature. I did not have any really behind the scenes for that because at the time, Matt had a different work schedule at the time. Yeah. And so Matt would actually, for like the first time in a very long time, would get off of work before I did. And so because there was still daylight at that point in time, Matt would leave and go shoot or, do what they needed to do at that point in time. And where I was, at home in my little closet office still. So, I didn't have really too many behind the scenes other than the one moment of Matt in the backyard of like, hey, can you just take a video? I mean,
I think I made sure the next time I did it, I made sure that you were actually working and weren't available to run out. So I do that some random time. I don't know, but yeah, I did it earlier in the day. So yeah, you couldn't do that. But
like for example, I have a really cool idea for Matt's challenge this week, and I kind of just like thought of it right now at the point in time. So Matt's of course giving me faces. But I'm hoping that if it's something that I can easily acquire or either figure out how to make it myself, maybe I can just be like, hey Matt, can you just shoot this video for me and my personalness? Because
yes,
I need this. So we'll see. But I'm excited to, I think it would be fun to give the kind of behind the scenes of like what we see. And of course, like, the editing part, I don't really see much on that for the most part. Shooting now, I'm sure I'll see a little bit more since Matt's back on their normal schedule. And so that, I am getting off earlier than Matt is at this point in time. So hopefully.
Yeah, I like my current schedule. Work when I want to, basically. But anyway, so I don't remember what we initially were talking about ultimately, but
originally the question is your equipment upgrades, short list of items that you plan on picking up soon.
Short list of items is I'll need a lens. I need a wider lens. I've been looking at either 11 millimeter or 12 millimeter, either made by Rokinon, Rokinon or I don't remember the other company that I was looking at, but Rokinon was IRIX. IRIX was another one. A little bit more expensive, but I think to me doesn't have the warping of a wider lens that I would have to deal with in the Rokinon lens. But anyway, those are kind of like short lists. Although the IRIX one is a lot more expensive. It's like 3 times as expensive as the Rokinon, but that's what I'm currently looking at. And of course, lenses tend to be almost as expensive as the stupid camera at this stage. That's ultimately what you run into is like the IRIX lens is $1,000 or $1,200, and then the Rokinon I think is either $329 or $429, something like that. So I mean, the lenses themselves are crazy expensive. The other thing I'm looking into is something that I always wanted to use while I was in film school, and I think I was able to use it once, was a crane, or actually a jib in this particular instance. Jibs are smaller, so they're basically on a tripod, an arm, so it gets these nice big shots, these overlooking shots, and they come down. And I made a motion with my hand, but I realized you can't even see it on the stream. So oh well. Um,
You just need to
so
lean back and be like,
but anyway, so I had each one of those, and uh, if I remember correctly, I think that was I think that video was with Josh in it, if I remember correctly. That was for a project that I was working on. But
oh,
yeah, so other than like I want to use not necessarily just for that purpose, but for other purposes in my actual work is I want to be able to use that for other like production stuff, like commercial, like bumper commercials and stuff like that, because um, some clients are like architectural type stuff, and so I think that'd be really cool there. But
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll be actually using it for any of these challenges. I definitely will if I have it, but I want to get a. Actually, I think it would be considered a crane at the stage because it's so large, but they're so cheap now. Um, one of the ones I've been looking at is the Pro Aim Alphabet, which I don't know what's called Alphabet, but it's a 21 footer. So it's 21 feet long, but it can go down to 7 and 14 feet as well. And I think it's only like $600 or $700, which to me is bananas cheap. I think previously to get like, I think the one I used at a production company right out of college was, I think that one was only like 8 or 10 feet, and it cost like $600 or $700. So it's crazy how I guess more competitive the industry has become, and things have gotten cheaper um,
mhm.
and more obtainable now. So like that's a pretty big purchase, but that is something I definitely want to do because, like I said, I deal with a lot of architectural shoots, houses, doors, like big stuff, and so I think those would be great there. The other thing I'm looking at is actually just Will asked me to look at something um, at a company. I think it's the same company that makes his gimbal that he just got. Is they make something called a slide pod, and it's what I've been looking at is a slider, a motorized slider. So the camera moves on a track from left to right or right to left, or if you angle it up, it'll go up and down.
Oh,
So it makes these nice little very slide motions used in a lot of architectural type shooting. So that's something I want to look into. The downside with a slider is that you usually have to have stabilization on like two tripods, sits across a tripod, stabilizes it. It's kind of harder to mount. But they make something called a slide pod, and it's like it looks like a cane, like a walking cane, and you mount the camera to the end of it, mount the tripod in the center, and it pushes like it's almost like I don't know if it's pneumatic or mechanical, but it pushes it out, and it can hold like 13 pounds, so it could easily hold the camera. But it's same concept, but lighter weight, doesn't require as much stabilization. So that one's on the short list as well. Because I eventually do want a slider. Like I have a rail slider, but it's not mechanical. I actually have to move it, and I don't want to deal with that. I'd rather just use a like one that it does it for me. So
What, Matt, what are your thoughts on MacGyvering those kinds of things? I just sitting here thinking of like, if I had no resources or time or access to these kinds of equipment, sitting here thinking at like a just goofing around at camp situation, what would I do?
so actually, it's something I have done. Skateboards, wheelchairs, sitting in a wheelchair holding the camera, or putting the camera on a skateboard and moving the skateboard along. Those are all things that are easily doable to create that slider effect too. Um, of course, I just don't want to take a wheelchair or a skateboard to a client. Have
Yeah.
someone push me. And most of the time, it's just me shooting. Every now and then, Jen will go with me to do the shoots, some of the more complex ones. But yeah, those. I mean, honestly, the thing is if you get the desired result, great. And a lot of times you can do that. It's just to me the convenience of having something that works a little bit better is in my equipment bag. That's something I can just whip out and go. That's really really handy to have. And like I said, it also looks more professional in front of a client in the event that comes up. Um, so yeah, I mean, but having that ability to do that, something like that, I think the thing is it still works. It does
Yeah.
work if you have. Not everyone has access to a wheelchair, but it's a little bit easier to access to a skateboard or something like that. And actually, I think some of sliders out there actually look like little skateboards, and they just go on a little track.
That might be
So
a really good way for Will to try to do the perspective of a cat or dog is like a little skateboard mounted camera.
and he probably because I was thinking in the gimbal, he might get away with it, but there should be
It
a
might be too
mode,
fluid.
huh?
Don't you think it would be too fluid?
So there should be a something. It's usually called like follow mode, and it's where like if you take the gimbal and you tilt it downwards, it also tilts downwards instead of just staying steady. So some of them have like like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, the Pocket Osmo would be great here, honestly, because it's such small and it would work just perfectly. But or the Osmo Pocket, yeah. So, but like, uh, big camera, I don't know how he's gonna, like I said, I don't know how he's gonna pull it off. Like, I thought about like if I had like a dog, I'd grab like Kaylee's paw and move it in front of the camera and make it look like she's pawing it. So, like, I don't know how I'm gonna make it happen, but I mean, that's another thing is it's because we have huge dogs, so I have no
Yeah.
idea. Uh,
Yeah,
Jen,
no, very
Jen was like,
interesting.
Jen was like ball pit it, and I was like, we're gonna need to make like a production bank at this stage. Like how? What's my budget for this production? You know, like some of these, like, do I want a ball pit? Hell yeah, I want a ball pit. Do I have a place to put
Absolutely.
it? No, but
Mhm.
I'll make it. But for a challenge, I will do that.
You guys have an
So
extra bedroom.
yeah, yeah,
We're here.
yeah.
Jen, did you get upgraded to an office?
Oh no, I personally, so for everybody who's listening and watching, I work at home currently in my closet. And so my desk is in my closet. I have my computer and like a secondary as a second monitor in my closet. And
It's a
no,
big walk-in closet that we don't really use, and
it's
that's the
pretty big.
reason.
For the most part, okay, so like whenever I explain to somebody like how big this closet is, basically I could lay on the ground, and I mean, yeah, I'm 5'1", whatever, 5 1/4. Who's counting? But I could like starfish and like,
You are.
carpet angel if I wanted to, because it's large enough. Like for the most part, before I would, do thing like work out in the closet because the shower's on the other side. So I just like work out in the closet and just like, all right, shower
Yeah.
time. But no, I'm still in the closet, in my closet office, just because it's easy. Like it's just so nice to be in there and just like close the door if I need to,
Mhm.
and do what I need to do. I upgraded to a standing desk, so I have like enough space to
Nice.
like do what I want to know. I have not upgraded to the guest room. The guest room is still the guest room for the most part. For the most
Soon to
part,
be a ball pit
with
room apparently too.
it
So
could be a ball pit room, honestly. I mean, why not? Why not put a damn ball pit in here?
yeah,
Might as well.
yeah. All right. So I don't know how we get distracted to ball pit here, but ultimately Will's going to be joining us here. So I don't know if Will's ready,
Yay!
but yeah. So did I hear Lizzie on your end? You say yeah? I thought I heard
No,
something
I
in the
said
background.
yay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right. I'm
He
gonna go ahead and
was
bring him in
yelling
here.
from his room. Oh yeah, I'm good. So I don't know.
There we go.
Oh,
Hello.
we
Oh, now
have
now
an
we got all this
unboxing.
whiteness. Yeah. Do I have
Oh
a?
man,
That's too narrow. My
I
messy
just flew
office,
in from
but
Cleveland, and boy, are my arms tired. How are y'all?
yeah, good. So we kind of stalled here
I thought you
for the
said,
most part.
well, we're kind of done. Thanks for joining us an
Yeah,
hour after the fact.
so of course you've only had half of the story at this stage here, and of course now that Will's here, of course he'll have his own story here as well. But Will, what we kind of talked about was how it came to be, how I joked with you about how it happened, and of course I know you kind of have your own side of the story on how that all occurred and how you made me buy a camera that I didn't want and stuff like that. I'm kidding. or I got something I didn't realize I actually needed. So
Exactly.
yeah, so yeah, because I talked about how I would jokingly said something, and then I jokingly said, "Hey, you can give me a challenge," and that's kind of how it all unfolded there. Do you want to talk about? Because I kind of talked about my equipment. Some things Jen asked me, what are some items on my short list? I guess Jen, if you can ask them the same questions, what equipment are you using right now with the challenges?
Yeah, well, give us a little bit more context of like the equipment that you're shooting on, the equipment or like additional accessories that you've gotten for your camera, and then like what's on your short list to buy next?
I'm shooting on the little brother of Matt's camera, the Pocket Cinema 4K, which is going to require. I have a lens for it. Eventually, I will have some lenses for it. But unlike Matt, who can just slap some nice Canon EF lenses on, I've got to invest in some 4/3. But I'm fine with that because the Canon lenses I have are just okay. They're not anything to write home about. But that, and I think I've got the crop factors 2 on the. Is that all Pocket Cinemas, Matt?
I don't think so. I think mine's like a 1.6 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mine. Do it.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say the crop factor. People listening asking about crop factor. That's kind of what we were talking about the sensor size earlier on. Is that when we do the crop factor, basically everything's set as 35 millimeter, like a 35 millimeter camera, 35 millimeter sensor. So everything is 1-to-1 in that scenario. But when we talk about crop factors, it means the sensor's smaller, and basically whatever lens you have is times that crop factor. So a 24 millimeter lens at a 1.6 is actually a 35 millimeter lens. So talking about crop factors, things are much more narrow, much more zoomed in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you know.
And because mine is a crop factor of 2, there isn't. I mean, I could get a zoom lens and dial it into effectively 35, but I don't have the money for a cinema lens that can zoom because I have a mortgage to pay. And
that's what we were just talking about. We're just talking about how lenses are as expensive as the camera at this stage. I've spent more in accessories just to get my rig together than the camera itself.
At this point, I have probably spent. I have probably spent half I spent on the camera on accessories, and that is just lens and gimbal. Like that doesn't count just all the other little dribs and drabs of crap that I'm going to have to buy eventually. Like I'll need a mic, I need lights, I need some additional stuff.
You also have the hard drive.
Oh, the hard drive. There's another $120. So yeah.
Did you ever get a CF card for the gimbal? Or can you mount the hard drive onto the camera as well?
You can mount the hard drive on it. I really don't. So I've got the iPhone app for controlling the camera, so I'm not worried about integral features on the gimbal. So because I really didn't want to give up having to. I didn't want to have to go spend as much as I spent on the hard drive again on a CFast card and then something to read the CFast card, which that's the cheap part. And
I just realized I actually have been calling it a CF card this entire time because that's how they abbreviate a CF card.
Oh,
it's a CFast card, which I was saying I thought it was a compact flash card because I have a ridiculous amount of those.
Same,
but
I figured
that CFast cards are bananas expensive for.
Oh yeah, no, I think
reasons on
you that told me that because I just assumed it was compact flash.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what happens when you don't.
And I think we also both got lucky because I didn't even think about it until after the fact. Getting these 4K, 6K cameras, you have to have a computer that can chomp through that data.
Yeah.
And I realized I played it. I was like, I hope this works. Like, I don't know. Like, my computer's older, but I hope it can run it. And it did. It held it fine. Actually, if I recall, I think I got it because I was shooting 4K drone footage at the time for real estate shoots and stuff like that. Okay. So it was able to chomp through that. So I figured hopefully at this shooting it either in ProRes or Blackmagic Raw that it would be able to chomp through. It does. It lags on unless I'm using if I'm using Blackmagic Resolve Studio, then it actually is fine with the RAW. But if I'm transcoding it into like Final Cut or something like that, then it takes a bit of time to chomp through that.
Yeah, and I'm prepared for that. I mean, eventually I'll get something. Yeah, I'll get a new computer this year. Because right now I'm on a 2011 Mac Mini server that's quad core with 16 gigs of RAM, and you can't edit 4K on that. I mean, you can.
Just really slowly.
I was gonna say, let me rephrase that. You can't edit 4K on it, but what you can do is edit 4K on it. Because that's what it feels like.
I mean, 11 years old.
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, yeah. I guess this year it is 11 years old. So, but no, I'll get either a new iMac this year, or I'm going to stop using this and move over to my 2015 MacBook Pro because it's slightly better.
Yeah.
And eventually, I'll either get an iMac or an M1 Mac Mini this year. So,
Ooh, M1
so
Infinity.
other than the Mac being on your short list of things to be getting, what else is there?
I need a tripod. I need a tripod that is not that tripod, which is a Bonphoto $50 impulse buy, just because I needed something.
But clearly it worked for the challenge so far.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah,
I was telling everyone, like, in my mindset, I was like, I don't want to do something like so much that it kind of blows you out of the water, because like when doing challenges with Jen and stuff like that, like I will do something that I'm very good at, and she's like, I don't want to do this anymore
I hate
because
to
I'm
lose.
too good at.
I
Like,
hate
yeah,
to
and
lose.
she's like, I don't want to do this anymore because I'm never gonna win. So in my mindset, I kind of didn't want to blow you out of the water, but like I said early on the stream, F you, Will, I'm bringing it now because that last challenge you did, I was not expecting that. So
oh, whatever.
I mean, all right.
No,
So
Will,
yeah,
it was very good.
Well, thank you.
it was creative. That was the thing. It was creative. It wasn't just what I'm thinking of doing for the challenge. I'm still gonna do it because I really want to try that aspect, and because I've already started, because I actually plan on doing it probably tonight. But and of course, again, like his last challenge was shooting fire or fireworks or something that is flammable essentially, or on fire, and that's what mine is, ironically. And that was completely random. We didn't pick it. It just we spun for it, and that's what we got.
You've
So-
got apples to compare apples to now. Like you
Yeah,
actually have okay, here's what I can work with.
Yeah, and I'm probably gonna shoot mine in slow mo, which my camera, which I didn't realize your camera didn't have the ability to do 120 frames a second. Now
Yeah.
mine does, but there are significant limitations on it, and those limitations is that I have to shoot in Blackmagic RAW, and I have to shoot either 2.6K or 1080p basically.
Okay.
So I can shoot in either of those, but it has to be done in Blackmagic RAW at 120 frames. So I ultimately was like, well, crap, I don't really want to use like the Studio, Resolve Studio, because I've learned other things. But I think I'm going to use that. We talked about there's a transcoding plugin that is built into Final Cut that will pull it in and it transcodes it, which is probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to use that, drop it in. But yeah, it has significant limitations. Now, the downside to using a lower resolution on a 6K camera is that literally the sensor size goes from 6K down to like 1080p, which effectively crops it. So again, the crop factor increases by like 4 or 5 at that point. So it's just free zoom. That's true, free zoom. I mean, so that'll be interesting to shoot with. So that was something I was trying to figure out. I was sitting there messing with the camera, like, why the hell is this not working? Like, why can't I get it up to 120 frames? And then I realized. So, yeah. So that, again, that was the whole purpose of the challenge, is to, oh, hey, this is the issue. How am I going to figure this out? So, I mean, honestly, everything is doing its job challenge wise. Jen, what else did you ask me? Jen, are you listening?
Let's. What are some personal challenges other than like, what are some personal challenges that you experienced with the 2-week challenge that that you can speak about?
I don't know what I'm doing. How about that?
Okay.
It's been like, I don't know how many years since I've ever actually had to like sit down and plan out a shot and then do that. Like the last time that I was like seriously working on stuff like this, my dad, when he worked for the city of Duncanville Fire Department, I was a videographer for a bunch of like civil projects that they were doing, and I edited a bunch of stuff for them, and that ended in 2008 or 2009. And I did some stuff after that was just kind of one-off, helping folks with just tiny little things. Lindsay, who appears to have jumped off this call, she and you're on mute.
You're on mute, Matt.
Yeah, I was coughing. I moved her off the stage for just a moment because she had walked away. So
Okay.
that was just the reason. Which goes back and she'll move back in.
Okay. Which y'all helped with this when we did the crap. What was it called? It was the film festival thing that Lindsay did with. Oh, there she is. With
Yeah.
Girl Scouts out at the camp in Glenrose, which, like I said, you two
Right.
came out and helped with that as well. Like
Yeah.
I helped edit and kind of teach how to use Final Cut, and I think when was that 2011?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's when Matt and I we just started dating.
Yeah, I think that might be the last time I actually sat down and banged my head against a keyboard to make something work in Final Cut. That might be it.
If I remember correctly, I think it was something. I just remember the audio of Shoes. I think it was. I don't remember. It was some song. We had a.
I just remember
It
Kesha
was
and
because
Matt's
it was like one of her songs,
forever.
but it had some lyric in it that we couldn't use. So
It was just questionable enough that I was freaking out over it unnecessarily, and we stayed up way too late trying to fix that. And it was.
Did we overdub it or just mute it? I can't remember.
I think one of us voiced it over.
Okay.
You did,
Yeah,
Matt.
VIP.
Oh, I did?
sleeves.
Okay.
Sleeves, yeah.
That's what it was. Sleeves. Yeah, we made it
VIP
sleeves instead of sleeve.
I
Yeah.
will never forget Matt just coming back home and just being VIP sleeves. No VIP. I don't even know what the lyric is anymore because
Because it was stuck in my head. Because I had to take so many. Like I had to get the tone right. I had to match that high pitched tone.
And you know what?
Oh my goodness!
You know what?
And it worked.
It worked. You
Yes.
did it.
Well, and I feel like the first year we did it, we had so much issue because there was the Wi-Fi out there was non-existent, and that was some fun. You guys came in clutch. Friendship cemented right there.
Yeah, that was a hell of a weekend. 2 years in a row.
I remember playing Tiny Birds. That's what not Tiny Birds. Yeah, was it Tiny Birds? The little
Angry Birds.
Tiny
Angry Birds.
Birds.
Huh?
Angry Birds.
Angry Birds.
No, the bird that swoops on the hills.
Tiny Wings.
Tiny Wings.
Tiny Wings. Okay, it was Tiny
Was
Wings.
it? Shit. I don't have that game anymore. I don't remember. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It had
I
that really-
love playing the game.
It had a really chill soundtrack.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
still exist?
Yes, it does. It came up recently. I recently re-downloaded it. I was like, oh, this is cool. So,
Apple
Tiny
Arcade. There's just been
But-
so many new games. So
sorry. Yeah, got way off track there. But we lost all our viewers. We were at 7. Now we're at 2.
We had viewers?
yeah, we're really really live right now.
I know we
We're
are.
live on like a lot of platforms, but and
Yeah,
I'll end up editing this down into an actual podcast so to put it on other places. But yeah, so of course,
Oh, sorry.
no, I was going to actually say the whole reason this, and in my opinion, the whole reason this all started, why we got all the equipment stuff was because of one of your projects. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm making a project about the most boring thing that anyone's ever thought to
Shut
write
up.
about.
So boring that no one's ever done it before. Is that what you're trying to say? I'm kidding.
Yes.
Well,
no,
plug, shameless plug. Come on here.
Yeah, shameless plug here.
I don't. As someone who has an infinite amount of shame, you're asking a lot of me, Jen.
Do you want me to try to tell my version of it so that you can get angry and then correct me passionately?
No, I'm just going to preempt that. So, no. So for anybody that's listening, working on a documentary about something that's kind of hard to describe. The simplest explanation is just to say that it's a book that destroys itself when you're done reading it. It's slightly more complicated than that, but
A digital
Well,
book.
you're like leaving
Yeah.
out all the bits that made me be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I need more info because this sounds so fucking cool. Like,
It's
so mind you, Will, whenever Will first started talking about this, I remember the first time, like, I glazed over. But whenever I asked again and I was like, "Well, tell me about it," and Will explained it, I was like, I was hooked. I needed more info. I tried, like, searching anything I could find because I was literally hooked.
okay. Well, I mean, so the slightly longer explanation is in 92, these three guys, one of which probably is the name that's more household than the other two. But it was these three guys, Kevin Begos, who was a publisher, Dennis Ashbaugh, who's an abstract artist and probably this country's like foremost abstract artist. At least he was at the time, and for a long time before then, and for a long time afterwards. Like he's got paintings in a bunch of museums. The Houston Fine Arts Museum has one, or the Modern Art Museum. It's one of the museums in Houston. I can't remember. The Whitney has one. There's a bunch everywhere else, but him and the third guy, who's kind of the household name, William Gibson, who is an author, the father of cyberpunk. They kind of got together, and Kevin kind of had wanted to. He was a publisher of what were described as museum grade manuscripts. So he would take manuscripts and publish them in these just elegant, expensive sort of form factors. You would get these books and they cost hundreds or thousands of dollars each, usually thousands of dollars each, but they were just these beautiful handmade works that were the kinds of things that if you were big in the Manhattan art scene, you might collect these, especially if you were specifically a book collector. And he kind of got tired of people buying his books and never doing anything with them. Like it isn't that he exclusively made stuff for people to take home and read, because these were very expensive things, but these were the kinds of things that people would basically bring out at parties and show off, like, haha, look what I have, and then put it right back in the box, and that was it. And so he in a roundabout way knew the other two guys, and they had wanted to. Ashbaugh and Gibson had wanted to kind of collaborate on something for a while, and everything kind of congealed into what on earth? Everything kind of congealed into this perfect storm of, they all kind of had a similar idea at the same time. And what it ended up morphing into was this thing that, because Kevin was so tired of these books never really being appreciated for what they were and just being used as status symbols, they decided, all right, we're going to make a book that is self-erasing. It's just this self-effacing thing that once you open it up, it starts disappearing. And that was sort of Ashbaugh's domain, was to come up with the means of doing that. And he and Kevin worked on a bunch of different things, and they were originally trying to make it print stuff with photosensitive ink that when you expose it to sunlight, it would break down and disappear.
Oh yeah.
They were never able to really make that happen. At the end of the day, what ended up being used in the printed section, because it was an actual book, in the printed section was unfixed or uncured laser toner, which if you've never handled laser toner, it is like finer than talc. Like, it is just, it's plastic. I mean, it's plastic that is fine as talc, if not finer, that it's bonded to paper by melting it onto paper, basically, while it's running out of the printer. And so uncured, and how it is affixed to paper is via static charge. And that's what holds it on there while it runs through the part that melts it to the paper. Well, if you can charge the paper and then print or stamp that toner down onto it, it'll stick. But the second that charge starts to dissipate, it will just fall off. And you don't even really have to charge the paper. You could probably just stamp it on, which is probably all that was done. And as you turn the pages of this book, the things that are printed in the toner, they just, as you turn the page, it just disintegrates and blows away. And at the back of the book was this little cutout that had a floppy disk in it. And you put that floppy disk in a Macintosh, like one of those back there.
Only a Macintosh.
Yes, only a Macintosh. It only ran on the system requirements were kind of broad. You had to have 4 megabytes of memory, and you couldn't use anything beyond like a 68030. Like like a Quadra or a Power PC, anything like that was out the window. And so when you ran it, when you put the thing in there was a program you could run. And when you ran it, this window came up and text started scrolling up the screen kind of slowly, and it was William Gibson's biography in this free verse poem. It's, I think, about 301 lines in length. And when it got to the end, the poem went away, and just a bunch of garbled text would scroll up the screen, and then it would quit and go back to the desktop. And if you tried to run it again, it would just tell you, "Oh, sorry, the program crashed." In reality, what happened was as soon as you ran that program, it made a copy of itself in memory, which is why it required so much memory. And when you did that, it would run out of memory, and it was no longer reading anything off the floppy disk. And when it got done, it would encrypt, and that's not actually what it did. It was the text was already encrypted. It was just decrypting it in memory and reading it to you. And then when it was done, it basically closed the text back and threw away the key that it used to decrypt it, and then overwrote the first, I think, 4K of the application, which is everything at the time that Mac OS needed to know what kind of application it was. So you could never run it again. The key was gone, so you could never decrypt the text again. By 1992 standards, I mean, you could, a modern desktop with a couple of hours worth of work could probably tear that apart and decrypt it. And that was it. It was a thing you could only experience once, and the entire thing was sort of this treatise on human memory. And yeah, so it was this thing that they made. It had quite a bit of fanfare at the time because Kevin Begos was, as he was not a shameless promoter. He knew how to promote things. He knew how to get attention, and he did. Because this is the kind of thing that he did. He made these exotic, beautiful works of art and knew how to attract the right clientele, and he did. Except the project was a financial disaster, and it kind of drove him out of business, and he quit publishing after that, and eventually went to write for the Associated Press. Never went back into publishing, but yeah. And then it was sort of this neat thing that persisted for a little while, mostly in like the hacker subculture. And then that was it. People just kind of forgot about it until late 2000s. Somebody found a disk that had not been executed, and they made an image of it and put it on the internet. And now you can just go download that image and run it as many times as you want, because you just load the image. Either write the image to a floppy and put it in one of those things, or run it in an emulator. And as soon as it's done, you can just take another copy of the image, remount it, do it all over again. So at the end of the day, it has gone from this, the whole point of the whole Gestalt piece of art originally was, memory is this incredibly transient thing, and it all looms around human experience, which is just this momentary part of your existence. And what's real is what's in your head. And if you had to put it in just a phrase, we are our memory. That was the whole point. And that you really only got to experience something once, and you were wholesale reliant upon your memory of what that thing was for the rest of your existence until you died. And the first part of the poem is Gibson coming across a photo album that belonged to his father when his father was a kid. And Gibson's father died when he was, I think, 6 or 8. He was very young. So he never really had any knowledge or memory of his dad. I mean, just what he knew in his very brief, period of sentience as a human being in the time that he got to interact with his dad. So a lot of the poem is him going through this photo album and looking at pictures of his dad when his dad was young and kind of trying to build a simulacrum of his dad out of nothing. Like he's trying to take someone else's memories and make something out of that. And it's this really intimate experience that you're getting to share in that all the while he's demonstrating that, look, this is the only persistence that someone has is through the memories that they themselves have and then try to leave behind in some form. And so over time, when this thing got uploaded to the internet, with permission of Gibson, like he okayed all of it, it immediately sort of became this beautifully ironic thing, because you went from having this thing that was a thesis on transience of experience and how important memory is to the human essence, that you can only really experience something once, to, oh shit, now you can just do it as many times as you want. And you might think that, oh, hey, that completely devalues everything that the thing was trying to work towards originally, but it doesn't, because all it's done is remain contemporary. Because you think about everything we have now, I've got every photo I've ever taken in the last 14 years on this phone. I can go back and relive that stuff anytime.
It's also like the same background that you've had for I don't know how long.
Since my first iPhone, 2007. That is the same background I've had.
So, of course, with all of this, of course, explaining how this is all has occurred here, what is your hope that your documentary will actually provide to the person on the end? I understand, what I'm saying is that I understand the reason why they created it, but I guess my question is what do you want people to get out of it?
A couple of things. This is something that I've kind of been trying to distill, because I've had a year to think about this, and as it turns out, it takes a really long time to think about shit like this and actually make it into something that you can condense into a 60-minute block of time that someone can walk away with meaning. Some of that I'm still actually kind of working on, because it's really difficult to chew through. The thing at the end of the day that I would like people to walk away understanding is probably the wrong word, but thinking about, is you've got one shot. You have one go at existence. Do your best with it, because you are your memories, and try to make good ones, because ultimately, well, yeah, sorry.
It's okay. So just to make sure, because Matt already said it, but the whole reason why you got this camera, Matt ended up getting this camera, this challenge all started, is because Will is making a documentary. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the impetus for a lot of this, was I needed to learn how to use this thing. Sorry, I think I just spent 15 minutes talking about nothing at all that has to do with what we're actually doing.
No, you covered your documentary.
Yeah, that was the purpose. Yeah.
It's a complicated topic. And so I think the interesting thing from a filmmaking perspective is, how do you cover all the different things you want to cover in the story in the format that you're given?
And in a visual format too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's difficult, because well, one, COVID. Obviously, doing things in person is kind of a difficult endeavor nowadays. But also, the people involved are old. Kevin Begos is dead. He died in 2021 of a heart infection. I think a heart infection. It was some kind of heart problem. Survived COVID. He was the mayor of a small town in Florida. He might have had one of the most interesting lives of anybody that I've ever actually bothered like reading into. That was not some epic individual like a president or something like that. Like as far as just normal people are concerned, he lived a very interesting life. And like I said, survived COVID, became mayor, I think in 2018 or 2016, I can't remember, of the small town. Basically ran on this platform of, we have a waterway problem, elect me mayor, I want to fix this problem. And it worked, and he got elected. And unlike any other politician maybe in this country's history, he did the one goddamn thing he said he was going to do, and everyone loved him. And he was this beloved guy. So like I said, survived COVID, like really understood the problem from the get-go, put down mask mandates like day one, and ended up, I think it was a heart infection, but he passed away last June. Like I found that out like 2 weeks after he died. Like I was trying to get a hold of him. He was like, son of a bitch. And so, and the other two guys are just as old. I think Gibson was born in 48 and Ashbaugh, I think, was born in like 49. Wow. So these guys, to quote,
but you've already been in contact with them though, haven't you?
Yes, and I need to get back. I need to reach back out to him. I've been woefully delinquent in doing that. But
so in another video, I'll eventually I want to talk about some of the challenges that you've encountered, especially if in the event that you can't shoot, like go there and interview them, what other options you have. So in a later video, I'd like to discuss that at some point. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm glad we kind of got to, or everyone got to hear a little bit about what that ultimately is, and ultimately that's actually what started this idea that your documentary actually is what the precursor to what started the 2-week film challenge, essentially. Yeah. But just quick, because we're about an hour and a half currently here, so we're going to start wrap. No, you're fine. We're just going to go ahead and wrap it up here. But ultimately, wanted to mention about our current challenges. Of course, I have the same one that actually Will had, which was shooting some type of fire. Will, yours is the animal, cat or dog perspective shot from a perspective of that we get a perspective of the dog or the cat. Yeah. And so those challenges will be done in a week and a half on a Wednesday. So every Wednesday is when we actually turn our challenges in and draw for the next one. So we do a live stream right around midnight. So 11:59 p.m. is when they are due, which I think we both have gotten it already far before that. But yeah, that's when we go live, and maybe we'll move that to a little bit earlier time so more people can see it. But for now, that's kind of what we've been doing, is like 11 p.m. midnight. We get online, we go live, we show the videos, and of course, those live streams are always posted to our social media platforms, which right now it's Facebook, Twitter, and now we have Twitch and YouTube, so those will go live in the future there as well. This will be uploaded to YouTube, etc. Hopefully, eventually, we'll get to the point where we can also do an audio podcast, so that'll be available as well. But in that way, of course, video-wise, you can at least see what we've done and see how Will blew me away previously when I didn't expect it to, and now that I have to bring it down. So with that said, that's pretty much it that we have for today. Also, last thing is we do have a website. It's going through a redesign at the moment because I had a really great idea and it made it too big for myself and realized I was not cut out for this. And I didn't have time for this. So I'm actually going with a much more simpler design. But ultimately, there is information on the website, which is 2weekfilmchallenge.com. And it has information about our challenges. We will be posting the challenges there. So if you just want to go and see those actual videos, you can. It is live, but it doesn't have a lot of information there yet. It will in the next week or so, though. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So Jen, Lindsay, Will, thanks for joining us all. And of course, hopefully everybody will see us a week and a half, or at least Will and I in a week and a half, when we reveal our current challenges and go for the next ones. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.